The 2026 FIFA World Cup kicked off June 11th. As of right now, the matches are live, the stadiums are full, and somewhere in Zurich, FIFA is tracking a revenue projection of $8.9 billion from a single tournament. Here is the number FIFA is not tracking publicly. Canada's Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed this year that taxpayers will spend more than $1 billion Canadian dollars hosting an event where FIFA controls the ticket revenue. In the United States, 11 host cities are each absorbing between $100 million and $200 million in local costs: security, transit, stadium modifications, fan infrastructure, before a single game was played. The cities hosting the World Cup are not sharing in the World Cup's revenue. They signed a contract that ensured they wouldn't. What I want to show you in the next 10 minutes is exactly what that contract says, what it is costing specific cities right now, and why the person who understood the deal best was not the mayor signing it, it was the organization that wrote it. The terms of the agreement nobody made public. ProPublica and the Houston Chronicle reviewed 6 host city contracts in detail: Kansas City, New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Seattle, and both Texas cities. Their conclusion, in their own words, almost all of the organizing costs fall on the cities, whose ability to collect revenue is severely limited. Let's be precise about what that means. What cities pay security? Every host city is responsible for its own security bill. The U.S. federal government allocated $625 million in FEMA security grants across the 11 American hosts. That is federal taxpayer money, not FIFA money. Local costs on top of the federal allocation run into the tens of millions per city. In Foxborough, Massachusetts, officials threatened to withhold permits for matches unless FIFA or the stadium owner covered $7.8 million in public safety costs up front. They eventually got the commitment. Most cities did not have that leverage. Transit, NJ Transit is charging fans $150 for a round-trip train from Penn Station to MetLife Stadium on match days. The standard fare for that route is $13. The surcharge exists because the Transit Authority is facing a $48 million bill for 8 matches. That bill is being passed to fans because the city does not have another source to cover it. Stadium modifications. Even venues that were already NFL standard required changes to meet FIFA's commercial specifications: field dimensions, natural grass installation where artificial turf existed, and what FIFA calls clean site requirements. Clean site means no unapproved branding anywhere in the stadium environment. Venues with existing naming rights, deals a primary revenue stream for most American sports facilities, had to suppress or modify those arrangements at their own cost. What cities don't get concession revenue inside stadiums goes to FIFA or its designated operators, not to the host city or venue. Ticket sales go to FIFA. The official resale marketplace, where FIFA charges 15% from the buyer and 15% from the seller on every transaction, goes to FIFA. Sales tax on those ticket sales in multiple host states was waived as a condition of hosting. Alan Rothenberg, Los Angeles Host Committee 2026. Everybody signed an agreement that was very, very one-sided. Rothenberg was also president of U.S. Soccer in 1994 when the U.S. last hosted. Then, host cities received a share of in-stadium food and drink revenue. U.S. Soccer covered security. Some cities came out ahead. None of those arrangements exist in 2026. In 1994, some host cities made money. In 2026, the contract was rewritten so none of them do. That is not an accident. That is 30 years of FIFA improving its negotiating position, and it worked, because cities still competed to sign. The live accounting what is happening in the host cities today. Let's go city by city on the cost picture, because the aggregate number hides what is happening at the local level. Canada Toronto's World Cup budget, approved by City Council, is $380 million CAD. That figure rose from initial estimates in the tens of millions as the full scope of FIFA's requirements became clear through the contract process. The Government of Canada and the Province of Ontario are contributing to that total, but the city remains exposed to cost overruns above its council-approved ceiling. Vancouver's estimates range between $578 million and $624 million CAD, the widest cost band of any single host city, reflecting how late in the process the full financial picture came into focus. Canada's Parliamentary Budget Officer, examining both cities together with the federal contribution, put the total government outlay at $1.066 billion. That works out to roughly $82 million per match Canada is hosting. $82 average taxpayer cost per match in Canada, United States. The American picture is more fragmented because the costs are distributed across 11 cities, multiple levels of government, and a variety of funding mechanisms, some transparent, many not. Houston's host committee, run by President Chris Kennedy, holds the contract with FIFA directly. The committee is responsible for finding private and public funding to cover organizing expenses, no direct city or county liability, in theory. In practice, the committee is drawing on Texas's Major Events Reimbursement Program, a state taxpayer-funded mechanism established in 1999. The exact amount Texas is contributing has not been disclosed publicly. The governor's office has not responded to records requests. Multiple host cities waived sales taxes on World Cup tickets as a required condition of their hosting agreements. Missouri alone is estimated to forego approximately $11 million in sales tax on matches at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City tax that would normally fund public education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Across 3 states where estimates are available, the combined sales tax surrender is approaching $60 million. The demand shortfall, 80% of hotels surveyed by the American Hotel and Lodging Association reported bookings lagging significantly behind pre-tournament forecasts. Thousands of tickets remained available the day before the opening match. The tourism revenue that cities were promised would offset their costs is, so far, materially below projections. The costs are locked in. The offsetting revenue is not. At least one city, Chicago, withdrew from the bidding process entirely after reviewing the contract terms. Officials there concluded the financial exposure was not justified by the projected benefits. The cities that remained did so knowing the terms. What they could not fully predict was that the anticipated demand surge would also fall short. Following the revenue all the way to Switzerland, FIFA is a not-for-profit association, registered under Swiss law, paying minimal tax on its Swiss operations. This is the load-bearing legal structure of the entire arrangement. Because the commercial revenue generated by the World Cup flows through FIFA's Swiss entity, it is largely insulated from taxation in the countries where it is actually produced. The United States is hosting 78 of the 104 matches in 2026. FIFA's revenue from those matches is not subject to U.S. corporate tax rates. The revenue breakdown: broadcasting rights are the engine, projected at approximately $4 billion for 2026 alone, a 22% increase from the Qatar cycle. FIFA sells these rights to networks across 175-plus territories and retains the proceeds entirely. Host cities are not party to those negotiations and receive nothing from the outcome. Sponsorship: FIFA's restructured tiered program is projected to add nearly $1.8 billion. The sponsor list for 2026 includes Aramco, Coca-Cola, Adidas, Hyundai, Verizon, Lenovo, and new this cycle, Kraken as official crypto exchange supporter. Each of these partners paid for global exclusivity in their category. That exclusivity is enforced in the host cities, meaning competing brands cannot advertise or promote within stadium perimeters during the event. Ticketing and hospitality combined are projected to exceed $3 billion. This includes the official resale marketplace, where FIFA charges 15% from both buyer and seller on every secondary transaction, collecting effectively 30% of every resale dollar on a ticket it already sold once at its original price. FIFA sells the ticket. FIFA runs the resale market. FIFA takes 30 cents on every dollar when the ticket changes hands again. The prize pool of FIFA's $8.9 billion in projected tournament revenue, $871 million, goes to the participating national teams as prize money. The winning nation takes home $53.5 million. Every participating team receives a minimum of $12.5 million. That is an increase from Qatar $2 million more per team. Do the division: $871 million in prize money against $8.9 billion in revenue. 9,008% of tournament revenue returned to competing nations as prize money. 10 cents in every dollar goes to the teams producing the product. The other 90 cents stays inside the Swiss non-profit that has faced corruption investigations spanning 2 decades, from the FIFA-gate indictments of 2015 to the Qatar and Russia hosting controversies without meaningful changes to the underlying revenue structure. The governance may have reformed. The math has not. What FIFA promises cities and what the data shows FIFA's standard defense of its hosting model is economic impact. The 2026 World Cup, the organization and its consultants have projected, will contribute up to $40.9 billion to global GDP and generate over 800,000 jobs. That is a large number. It is also a number that economists have repeatedly struggled to verify in any post-tournament analysis of previous World Cups. What the research actually shows: Andrew Zimbalist, professor of economics at Smith College, and one of the most cited researchers on sports mega-event economics, has been direct about the 2026 situation. None of the host cities will benefit economically from the World Cup, because they do not get the revenue, but they get the costs, which can run well over $100 million. The University of Toronto examined the financial outcomes of the last 14 World Cups since 1966. 12 of the 14 resulted in net economic losses for host countries. Not for cities, for entire countries. The average return on investment across the last 3 World Cups was negative 31%. The tourism displacement effect, the economic theory behind hosting, argues that an influx of World Cup fans generates net new spending in the local economy. The observed pattern is different. Regular tourists avoid host cities during the World Cup, drawn away by price inflation. congestion, security restrictions, and the general disruption of infrastructure. The inflow of soccer fans is partially offset by an outflow of normal visitor activity. Zimbalist's assessment: the net tourism effect can go positive, negative, or neutral, but the costs are never neutral. They are always real, always large, and always public. In 2026, the tourism shortfall is not theoretical. It is already visible. Hotels across multiple host cities are reporting bookings at roughly 80% below initial forecasts. Tickets to group stage matches were still available the day before games kicked off in a tournament FIFA described as the most in demand in its history. The revenue FIFA projected for host cities through tourism, local spending, and visibility is arriving more slowly and at lower volume than expected. The costs those cities committed to are not variable. They were fixed when the contracts were signed, years before a single attendance figure was reported. The World Cup is real. The sport is real. The moments happening right now in these stadiums are not manufactured or compromised by any of the financial structure underneath them. This is worth being clear about. But the financial structure is also real. Host cities signed agreements that gave FIFA the revenue and kept the costs. They signed those agreements in competition with each other, in a bidding process that rewarded ambition over precision, years before the economic picture became visible. 12 of the last 14 World Cups resulted in losses for host countries. The average return on investment for the last 3 tournaments is negative 31%. Those numbers were available when the 2026 contracts were signed. They were available, and the cities signed anyway. 4 years from now, a new set of cities will announce their bids for 2030. The contracts will look the same. The promises will look better. The question worth sitting with not about the football, which is excellent, is about the next announcement. When your city's mayor steps to a podium and says the words, "We are proud to announce our bid to host the FIFA World Cup," what you now know is what that bid actually costs, who keeps the revenue, and what the historical record says about what happens afterward. That knowledge was available before 2026. It just wasn't in the press release.